You're listening to Some Roses Are Red, presented by 79.7. Thanks again for joining us on Some Roses Are Red, the show, interpersonal relationship show, where we talk about how you relate to people and things in and around you, not necessarily a romantic relationship, but just how you navigate the waters of interpersonal relationships and how you can suggest ways for us to improve, or tell us ways that you tried that were successful for you, or any method in between that you think might be poignant. So today's show, we have a person I have known all of my life, the entirety of my life, and he can probably say he's known me more than my life. He knew when my mom was pregnant with me, because that's my uncle Frederick Edwards, also known as Minister Fred Edwards. So I'd like to thank him for giving some time out of his schedule. He spoke briefly Friday evening, and he told me Thursday or Friday evening. I want to say Friday evening. He just coming down from a 24-hour, I don't want to say vigil. It was a prayer. We'll call it a prayer consecration. We'll call it that. And so I think it's awesome that we were able to get in contact with him and discuss the topic of today, which is purpose. So for the month of May, we are discussing purpose and what purpose means to you, and a bunch of different facets on the topic of purpose. So we'll get started here with, like I said, I'm speaking with Minister Fred Edwards, who's also my uncle, and a very, very positive mentor and a positive human being in general, even apart from being my blood family. So what I'd like to do, I often say on the program, if you watched the program before, I don't necessarily like to do bios, just because I think sometimes bios can be so limiting when you have the actual person that you can speak with. So Minister Fred Edwards here, our brief bio, and we'll jump right into it here. He's the creator and the host of the Facebook series 9 Smooth Stones. I know he's been a minister for many, 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 many years. He's a father, a husband, a life coach, a whole body wellness advocate, a former Marine, a former wrestler I knew who about, football player, athlete in many different sports. So again, welcome Minister Fred Edwards.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a joy and a delight to be on your world show, your world format. To invite me on this platform is a distinct honor. I know that you have access to connecting with the world, so that's why I'm here, to share and to add quality to the world.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And I like to give an explanation, because you can have tons of people on the show, but I like to give an explanation why I choose the people that I choose. So, again, apart from Minister Edwards being my blood uncle, one of the reasons I had him on the show here, I wrote a brief blurb here, I'll just go through real quick. Besides being my blood uncle, Minister Fred has been a constant supporter of self-discovery, faith, purpose, and accountable as well as responsible manhood. One particular story that I'll share with you guys here today is one summer when I was a junior in high school, going into my senior year of high school. Minister Fred came to Milwaukee. He was visiting. I believe he had a prayer conference that weekend, or a revival, I believe. And he came to my mom's house, and we hung out, I, my brother. And at the end of the visit, as he'd always done with every previous visit before then and even after to this day, he held a prayer just right before he left, with my brother and I. And during the course of this prayer, what I remember distinctly was that he spoke of setting goals for the upcoming year. He spoke about operating on faith for those goals during the prayer. And he spoke about being determined in regard to those goals. So as a result of those prayers, I remember that I decided to write down some goals that I wanted to reach for that upcoming year. Kind of believing and kind of not believing him, but I figured if he was accommodating enough to come down and even pray with us and pray for us, I thought the least I could do was to step out on that faith. So what I decided to do was I wrote down on a piece of paper, the piece of paper I still have to this day actually, I wrote down the words captain of the swim team and team MVP. And like I said, I kind of believed it, kind of didn't. So I wrote it down, and then I put it in my closet, and I really thinking about it. And I had honestly forgot about them until the end of the school year, when the swim team held their year-end banquet. Now, at the end of this banquet, after, they talked about all the different the trials and things that we had done for the year, all the different placements that we had for the year. They gave out the awards for the end of the year. And at the end of this year, I was named the team MVP for that year, as well as the co-captain for that, my senior year of high school, for the swim team. And while I know that I had to do the work and I still had to work hard and I had to, set the goals for myself physically, I do believe and still believe that Minister Fred, my uncle, gave my brother and I an incentive to act upon our faith, which was a skill that I have used time and time again until this very day, setting your goals visually so you can see them, and physically so you can see them and have something to shoot for. Like I said, I didn't even look at them every day. I just wrote them down that one time. And just, I believe, as a result of imparting that faith by way of prayer, I think that it for me, it motivated me to set a goal and then to act upon that goal. Like I said, not even looking at it each and every day. So I'm extremely thankful. And as I told my uncle on the last time we spoke, I could have called him for pretty much any month topic that I could have had, and I know that we would have had a great conversation. And some of the other reasons that I invite people on the show is because I invite people who are articulate enough to express a point without resulting to anger or without resulting to violence. And I've heard my Uncle Fred speak about many different topics, whether he believed in them wholeheartedly or whether he was just familiar with them. I've never heard him speak negatively about a topic he didn't agree with. I've always heard him give it at least an ear, if nothing else. And I think that that's important to bridge lines of communication. If we can be nothing but an ear, I think we can be of a service to, as you said before, to the community. So first thing we'll ask in regard to Minister Fred here is I like to ask an icebreaker. Now, we don't need to have an icebreaker because I said I've known Minister Fred for the entirety of my life. But for you guys who are in Some Roses Are Red listener land, you're not too familiar with him, I imagine, or you're becoming familiar with him through this podcast. So I like to ask a icebreaker question. So the one and only, rather, icebreaker question that I have for you is, if you were able to travel back in time to any time throughout history and give your former self one piece of advice and one piece of advice only, what time during your lifetime would you go back to, and what would you tell yourself?
Well, I think I would go right into that window or that space of adolescent before I transition into being a teenager. So we're talking about right between maybe 12 and 14 years old. I think I would have told myself that the turbulent years that are just ahead, are you going to make it through it? Are you going to come to a point of some critical identity formations? Some things are going to be clear to you, and go right now in this window of stepping into the threshold of young manhood, though everything seems to be turbulent, though everything seems to be not spelled out. Fred, hold your horses. It's going to all work out. And truly, even as I reflect on that, I can see that faith was a very intimate part and a very critical part of that journey as a young teenager. But I can see myself just kind of using the story to illustrate my point. I was in a city park as a kid, and I had a very bad habit of faking or pretending as if I could swim.
Oh, wow.
I would many times hold on to the gutter of the public pool, the park pool, and I would paddle my feet and swim kind of with one hand, always making sure that I had a deft grip on that gutter, making sure no matter how I try to make it look like I was swimming,
Right.
hey, I had that one hand. And particularly one summer and just enjoying the water as I often did, someone jumped in the pool and somehow their body clashed with mine. and it broke me away from the gutter.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, and so it just so happened that because I was into this fantasy of swimming, I was bordering from the 4 feet into the 6 feet, kind of right on that line. And of course, the lifeguard would say something like, if you can't swim, get back,
Right.
Don't be playing around here, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But of course, I wasn't listening because I was fearlessly faking.
Caught up in the fantasy.
until I got knocked. And the person that hit me, of course, they didn't pay attention. They didn't know. But I drifted to the deep end, and I went under. This is one of the first times I have experienced what I call an angel. As I went down for one time under the water, I could feel the pull of the drain in that pool, sucking me down.
Yeah.
And that happened once, that happened twice. And as I came up the third time, to kind of say help. But one of the realities that you have to know about that in city pools and public parking pools, people are always joshing and playing and calling out for help.
Right.
So it's kind of like, the little boy that cried fox or wolf, So when they hear you say help, they're thinking, okay, this is another prank, this is another guy. But on my end, it wasn't fake, but I got put in that same group. But I did feel a power that resurfaced me just beyond the laws of physics, because I didn't know how to tread, didn't know how to swim, but I did feel a power. I'm talking about an invisible power that brought me to surface and helped me be able to navigate myself back to the edge of my anchor of the gutter.
Right.
When you think about gutter, but that was my anchor, and I was able to make. Now let me say this quickly.
Okay.
From that point, it became a very, very, very desperate effort on mine to learn how to swim, and that I did. I learned how to swim very proficiently. I became a team member of the swim team. Got a letter in swimming. Got a letter in football. Letter in wrestling. Letter in music. So I was very active in my high school years at Tilden Tech. Blue Devils. I gotta say Blue Devils. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that out is because a lot of times we're faking the funk in life. We're not really having the substance that we're trying to project to others that we have. And sometimes crisis will help us take another look at where we are and what we need to do to really get serious about our walk in life.
Right.
And so that was a story that happened with me, and now I'm not only a good swimmer, even past tense, but I am till this day.
Okay, see, good icebreakers and solid pieces of advice. Because, like I said, for so long, I often use the story in regard to negative behaviors that you never have to worry about not knowing how to ski until you get on a mountain. So as long as you're not at a mountain, you can tell everybody you meet that you're an avid skier and that you're very proficient until it comes a time where you have to prove, and in your case, where you have to survive with the skill that you said you had. So I think that it's a very, very poignant point to make that the icebreaker of what piece of advice would you give yourself, because it's valid not just for the literal case of being able to swim in the water, but in terms of navigating life at that point from adolescence and growing into young adult and then to an adult. And as you said, that same piece of advice or that same wisdom can follow you even to this very day. So yeah, I can definitely agree with that, and I trust that you people listening have found the wisdom in that. I hope that you can apply those lessons to your very life. If you have not, if there's something that you find yourself not necessarily walking in wholly, but wholly, WHOLY, walking in wholly, that you can apply that lesson and you can choose to do those things for real. I remember I made a post on Facebook one time there was a assisted living place near where I used to live, and I was bored one day. So when you go on Facebook, sometimes it asks, do you want to check into nearby places? So I was just being silly, and I checked into the place, and people were like, oh, what are you doing there? And I'm like, oh, I'm just helping out the elderly. And a bunch of people were congratulating me, like, oh, that's a good job, it's a great thing to do. But I'm like, well, no, really wasn't doing that. And I felt so bad about it that I went down there the next day, and I'll check to see what I could do to be a volunteer. And what was interesting is that it was an assisted living, but they also had a hospice part of their program. So I ended up volunteering as a hospice worker for about a month or two. And during that time, it was some of the most interesting things, because you got to meet people who were in hospice at that time and who were nearing the end of their lives. So just the general conversations that you would have with the people, or just to see their disposition, was enlightening to me and very insightful. And there was a guy who was there when I first started there, and he passed away maybe 2 weeks into it. And I remember being so grieved about it. And I didn't even know this guy. I just met him maybe the week before. But it just spoke to me on what you're saying now in terms of living what you say you do, and in regard to the lessons you can learn by actually doing those things and actually walking in those things, as I did with the hospice worker, and as you said you did with the swimming pool, and as you gave for the advice you would give yourself as a adolescent. So I can dig it 100%. So on to today's topic, which is the topic for the month of May for Some Roses Are Red, which is purpose. 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 And Google defines our purpose as the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. So that's what Google defines as purpose. So the first question, it's not the first question, the first non-icebreaker question I would have for you, Minister Fred, is how would you best define purpose at this time in your life? How would you define purpose?
Well, for me, purpose has 3 layers or 3 expressions, 3 anchoring points.
Okay.
First of all, purpose for me has to do with me believing in the existence of God, me believing that God has a work or a will for me, and me believing that there is a wisdom that I can apply to fulfill that work and that will, and to please the one I believe exists in that place of God. So, number one, me believing that there is a God, me believing that God has a will and a work for me to do, and then believing that he provides wisdom for me to carry out that will, that work, so that I can please him, so that I can know him. So in a nutshell, my purpose consists of, and my purpose embodies, the knowing of God, a walk with him, intimacy with him. And then from that, it affords me to be able to highlight in my life the work he's called me to do, or the will he wants me to fulfill. And then he provides the tool or the impetus through wisdom as I seek him from his word, or as I seek him concerning the affairs of life. He begins to upload to me. That's a term I like to use, got from a friend of mine. He begins to upload to me the critical pieces that I need to pay attention to have a life that is progressive and a life that is upbeat. And I endeavor to do that more and more.
Okay. So I can definitely agree with you. And while you were talking, I was thinking about when we spoke earlier, and you said that you began to realize how important fatherhood was. And I thought what my thought was it's very interesting in regard to purpose, how you find, and I think this is across the board for all people, how you find the clarity in your purpose, not by who you are, but what you do for the people around you, what you do for the community, how you are identified by those people on the outside. As you said, how you are identified via your relationship with God, and how you are identified by what his word declares, and how you are identified by how you carry that word out into the world. So I think that I think one of the key things I think that people may make mistakes on in terms of purpose is that to oftentimes while you can find your purpose, the actual doing things by looking into yourself, I think you don't find the fulfillment in the purpose until you look toward the outer world, the outside of you, and you can find out where you fit in regard to the helping of humanity. And I think that's a great thing to have hidden within each one of us. The unique skills, the personal, the individual things that we learn about ourselves that we can apply to the outside world. I think that's a fantastic way to do it. And I think it's also great that, generally speaking, you don't find your purpose out in your life, easily. It's the things that are kind of hidden beneath us, kind of like when you plant a seed, the seed is there, but you don't see signs of it until the seed begins to grow. But it's there the entire time. So if it doesn't grow, it's still there. So I think that purpose kind of works for us and with us to that degree, that it's there, but when it's time for that purpose to manifest and to grow, I think that we see the outer signs, and then once it grows, just like any plant, it helps the community that it's involved, whether it's a food-bearing plant or a flower-bearing plant or what have you. I think it impacts the world around you once that purpose is fulfilled. So I can definitely agree with your definition of purpose there. So our next question is still in line with that one. Believing that, like love and success, purpose is not a static but a fluid concept, especially in humans, that changes according to time, of course, age and experience. So the question is, in what ways has your understanding of purpose changed from a young man to the age you are now? So we have your definition of what purpose is as the man that you are now, but if you can recall as a young man thinking about purpose, in what ways has purpose, the definition of purpose, changed, and that you've realized that change in purpose as you understood it from a young man to now?
I'm very, very conscious that a lot of significant things in life are progressive. They have a continuum factor to it, means it progresses from one point and it evolves over and over again. I think as a young man, my purpose was, in my formative years, more about what my faith community was teaching me.
Right.
In other words, as I grew up in church, I got a sense of purpose just through my faith community, the church I was in, the church we fellowship with, the group of people I grew up with, family and friends. All those formative years were vision casting. It cast a vision in me about the reality that I'm here for a purpose, and I must discover that what it is. But as a man my age now, I realize that a lot of my outward activity fell short of awakening me to my purpose, because I'm going to give an illustration. My wife and different other people I know, they play these games that, and they have them on Facebook and different other places, where they'll show you a picture and then you have to look at the picture real close to see an object that's kind of three-dimensional in that image.
Oh.
So, they may have a lamp, they may have a bird, they may have a boot on the floor, but the way that the picture is, you have to look closely to extract and identify what the item is. Even though it's right there before you, you just won't get it with a casual glance.
Right.
You just won't get it with a superficial look. There has to be an intentional and deliberate discovery of what's right there and obvious and before you. So that's what I'm trying to say now, that though some things may have been obvious about purpose in my life, though things that may have been obvious about the will of God, those dots were not connected. And then as I got older and I look intently at life, the time frame of life, things that the Word of God says, and the things I'm able to accomplish and see in discovering within myself, prayer, discovering within myself and my connection with God. And then it takes on a whole nother force when you think about how you can help others, when you have kind of found those dots in your own life. It enables you to really speak at some point of clarity. It enables you to speak at some point of definition, like this is what I've done, and maybe if I can share with you, maybe if I can enlighten you, you may also be stirred, or you might be inspired to see those same dots that I've come to discover over a process in a period of time.
Okay. I can agree with you. I know I keep saying I agree, but I do. That's why I have the people on the program that I do, because I appreciate the wisdom that people can share from their day job and just from their life. I think the most effective lessons are a life lived, that people can tell you about their actual lives and the actual real life experiences that people have had living their lives. So I'm super thankful, and I am going to agree with everything that you say in regard to this topic, because I'm just like all the listeners here. I'm looking for information that can help me go to the next step in my life, the step that I need to get to. So we spoke about you spoke about your faith community earlier when speaking about your adolescent life. So at what age, if you can remember, at what age do you remember first being guided or driven toward what would eventually become your purpose? So if you can look back and say the earliest memory you have of being kind of guided towards your purpose, or finally kind of recognizing, yeah, this is something that I think I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes, I think that's an excellent question. All of these questions actually are excellent.
Oh, thank you.
And as I respond to them, it gives me a sense of satisfaction that I have a workable answer. And what I say that is that sometimes people give you answers and it's a response to your question, but it's not workable.
Right.
It has no application beyond just the session of responding to the question.
Right.
But the question you're asking me are provoking, and then it causes me to give a working response or answer. And I would say that pivotal time for me was right between the ages of 17 and 19.
Okay.
Yeah, I can look back at my life and see how some things begin to gel, jive, and come together. Some things that may have been cloudy, some things that may have been uncertain. There's some validity that began to happen in my life. And the 2 points I want to say is in Chicago, back when I was in high school, they had a program through the public radio station, WBEZ, which is a very well-known station here in Chicago.
Okay.
They had an internship program where you can be chosen to become a part of an internship that was at WBEZ. But it was a 2-year program, a junior and a senior year. And so I didn't hear about it until my senior year. So I went for an interview. Now, mind you, this is in light of, well over 100 people plus that are interviewing and bidding for 25 positions. They only have 25 open.
Wow.
So you have well over 300 to 500 people that they got to narrow down for a class of 25. Mm-hmm. And also to add to that, again, I'm a senior and they only take juniors and seniors. It's a 2-year program.
Right.
But I remember the particular, you had to read your own personal piece of work or material that you wanted to share with them in the audition. And I read from the NIV, or the Message translation, 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, which is a famous passage about charity and love. And if you could have seen the people's expression as I read that out loud, and they said to me in so many words, "That's so beautiful. Where did you get that from? How did you come up with that? Those words about love and charity and giving?" Of course, I told them it was from an inspirational book. I necessarily didn't say the Bible, And then the second part of, so basically, from doing that radio plug, in addition to become a part of a class, I realized that my voice was significant, having a message, having something to say, having weight upon your voice, having some type of impact and influence, really at that teenage level was kind of a critical point for me. And then secondly, I had a chance to begin to open up my journey aggressively towards the call of ministry on my life at 17 years old.
Okay.
So between 17 and 19 are the 2 points. When I heard the call of God upon my life, he spoke to me inwardly. My mom told me I wasn't ready. And at that time, I didn't understand what she was saying, but I got it now. I got it real good. I got it. But I really wasn't ready, even though I thought I was.
Right.
But in the process of time, I became ready. I began to service that call to carry God's word. And so that one audition prepared me to know that in the earth, a part of my equipping mankind, loving mankind, doing service for mankind, had to do with my speaking gift. And then also had to do with my ministry gift, which more has an eternal application. One has a temporal application and one has an eternal application. So I can really say that honing it down, it would be right between the ages of 17 and 19 years old.
Okay. Well, while you're talking there, it reminded me of a message you've probably heard a number of times, probably have given a number of times, in regard to King David and how David was appointed when he was a boy, but he didn't become king for many, many years later. And after years of service unto Saul and many different things he had done during that time, but he was just as appointed at that moment by Samuel when he was appointed in his father's house as he was when he became king. So I think that, to your point there, in regard to purpose, you can be fully aware of your purpose, but as you said, it may not be time for you to walk in that purpose, but just to have that awareness can give you a kind of a leg up to try to hone some of the skills you think you may need. And I think that life, along with recognizing that purpose and walking in it and being found busy doing that, kind of puts you in a position where you're in a position to be more prepared for when you the day where you actually walk in that purpose and you're functioning within that. So I can definitely I can definitely understand your story and relate to the story, and as it relates to like I said, King David, I can definitely see the correlation, and it speaks to me because I'm still moving in a bunch of different directions that may be a good fit, that may not be a good fit, but I think that it's important that we as you said, the faith piece, you have to walk according to the faith, and if you believe that that's what it is, and you've prayed and you meditated about it, and you've taken your time, that you should definitely step out and see, because you'll never know unless you try. So I can definitely agree with you in terms of recognizing your purpose at whatever age, which of course you said 17 to 19. So, and through the help of the radio internship. So that's a phenomenal story. And if you're listening to the program now, I think that if you're plotting, following through on what you believe to be your purpose, I think that you should definitely, as we're talking about walking in that purpose, you should definitely give it a chance to walk in that purpose, because you won't know one way or the other until you step 1 foot out. You have to find out. So I think it's more painful to not find out and risk taking that purpose with you to the hereafter, if you will, or rather going to the hereafter and leaving your purpose here, than to try it and find out, well, nope, that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, but at least you know. So our next question here, we spoke about the adolescent years, and we spoke about the recognizing the first time you recognized what your purpose may be and walking in that purpose. During your adolescent years, during the time where you were being formed and you had just those dots of what your purpose could be, who were some of the most influential people in your world in regard to supporting your growth for that purpose, or just in general, and the eventual walk in your purpose? Who were the people who were the biggest supporters, if you will, or the biggest cheerleaders, if you will, toward helping you search for the purpose and then walking in the purpose?
Well, sure, there was many people actually. I can happily say that I had many people that influenced me, that guided me, that was there for me, that was a part of my immediate family and my extended family, uh, my faith community, as well as my environmental community, the neighborhood I lived in the 60s and the early 70s. But I do want to point out these five people, and not exhaustively. I'm not going to, elaborate on each of the five people, but I want to mention them because they're critical. For me, growing up in a two-parent home, I didn't know at that time how fortunate I was, especially being African American, to have a dad married to my mom for some 44 plus years, him coming home, him being a part of my life from day one I can remember to the time I graduated from high school and left to go to college. My dad was there, and me and him had a very productive, very healthy relationship. Everything wasn't always perfect with our relationship, but it was of such a quality that I benefited from him being my father. And of course, my mom, words can't even express, all that she did in her spiritual journey, and as well as just a very resourceful person of wisdom. And then going on, the sports arena, as I began to break forth and find my identity and my ability in sports, my coaching, whether coaching in wrestling, coaching in football, coaching in swimming, all those coaches had voices, had influence, had weight in my life that helped me with discipline, that helped me with the concept of teamwork, that helped me with, what it means to win together and work together. So just the coaching at large that I participated in as a youth. And then the third group was a guy named Mr. Watkins. I don't know whether Mr. Watkins is still alive today, but honestly, I get a kind of little misty in my heart when I think about Mr. Watkins. But Mr. Watkins was like our first Boy Scout troop leader. He was the troop master. Okay. And the cool thing about him, now I'm living in the inner city on the south side of Chicago, and Mr. Watkins, a black brother, was a furrier.
Wow.
A furrier. So a part of the program of being in the Boy Scouts at that time, that once a year we would go to his church, and he would wear a full-length mink coat or rabbit or whatever. It was a beautiful coat, man. It was a beautiful coat. And not just one kind, but we would see him wear these coats from time to time. But Mr. Watkins was very giving, very supportive, very fun, very down to earth. And of course, it was with a group of probably maybe 12 to sometime up to 25 guys. Matter of fact, one of my first experience of going out camping was with the group at Mr. Watkins. So it's very endearing as I even mention his name. So along with my parents, along with the coaching, along with particularly Mr. Watkins, also a particular preacher. I'm talking about a group now. My home church, Bishop Pulley, and then Pastor Eugene Taylor. Those were the initial pastors or clergymen in my life. And particularly one particular guy that wasn't directly in my local church, but he had a tremendous influence on my life, is Pastor Claude Lewis. He was the head, or so to speak, president of something we call the Chicagoland Youth Fellowship. Oh. So this, at my age, growing up, budding to be a Christian, there was like maybe 25 or 30 churches that came together with young people. So it was a powerful, powerful thing to connect with all these young people across the city from various denominations. So Claude Lewis was at the helm. He was leading out this organization. So he was a very integral part of that direction that I chose to go, that direction that was fostered in me. And then last but not least, I've been married twice, and I'm still married now, about to come up in my 25th year of marriage next year. But my wife and my children my wife, and my children continue to play the role in my life that helps me feed, that helps me find the sustenance that I need to live our purpose. They inspire me to want to live a high quality life. They do. They do. And so those are the groups that I would have to mention if I were to be honest.
Okay, okay. I can definitely agree with you in terms of the people that help shape you, or rather help support you in regard to the push for your purpose. And what's interesting is that as I said before, we did a program with Drew Edwards, who was Minister Fred's son and my cousin, and hopefully I'll be able to piece some of that together, because like I said, the audio got messed up with that one. But when he was speaking about the people that were influential in his life, he was pretty much saying the same things. He mentioned a lot of family. He mentioned you, his father. He mentioned his grandmother, and just various people. And he was speaking about at a time where he said that he was probably the most vulnerable in terms of which direction he could go for his life. These were the people who were speaking life into him, and were speaking that you don't have to go down a road that won't fit you. It won't put you in a place that you envision yourself being. It won't put you in a place that you want to be. So he said that these people were critical in speaking to him right where he was, and speaking about a future that had not yet become. So I can definitely agree with your circles of people who are influential, and I think that people in those positions, whether they know it or not, are incredibly important. And it doesn't take a ton of money. All it takes is time and sincerity, and you can be a beacon of light to people who are in process of reaching their purpose, or in process of just navigating life as we know it. So I'm definitely in agreements with the people and the organizations that you said were impactful to you during adolescence, and even to this very day, that are impactful in helping you stay focused and to stay on target for your purpose. So agree 100% there. So our next question here is there we go. In terms of your purpose, so we talked about the people that help you walk in your purpose. We talked about recognizing your purpose at an early age. Was there ever a time during your walk, even now or back then, where you felt kind of unsure about what your purpose was? Like if you made some steps and you're like, well, I don't know, I don't see the things that I think I should see, or I don't feel the things that I imagine I should feel when I'm walking in such a higher purpose. And the second part of that question is, how were you able to resolve this feeling? So was there ever a time where you felt unsure or uncertain about what your purpose was? And what did you do regarding those feelings? How did you overcome that?
Well, I think I would answer that with 2 points. One is there has been many cycles and many stages and phases in my life where I'm not always happy to say, but I have to be honest. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was shaken. You know, maybe at the death of my mom, or maybe at the loss of my grandchild, or maybe during times of particular severe trials in raising a family or being married. There were times where it seemed as if my foundation was shaking, and I felt I lost my bearing, or I felt I didn't have a clear and a precise way that I could just continue in life, like full of faith and full of foresight. There were times where things seemed to get murky and muddy. Basically, you know, we used to play this game when I was a kid where somebody would say, write a phrase down, and then so you had to kind of guess what the phrase was. Mm-hmm. And one of the terms they used was, you're getting hotter, and then, or if you're far from what the phrase was, they say you're getting cold. Then they're like, you're iceberg cold, you know, and you know, it was always a kind of description that if whatever they written down that you didn't know about, that you were trying to guess, they would use a temperature to help you gauge whether you were getting close to the answer or far from the answer. So that's my second point. As I probably have drifted in life at different times, hey, and I got cold. I got iceberg cold. You know, I was in the blizzard. I was on what they call a dinner rod. I was on a dinner rod of trying to find identity. And, you know, I mean, but the thing I can say is that when I came to terms with how faithful God is, He's faithful in my weakness. He's faithful in my brokenness. He's faithful in my ups and my downs. When I really kind of bought into His faithfulness, and I really kind of bought into how extravagant His love is for me and for His creation. Those were usually my warming up time, where I was coming back into, okay, you're getting hotter. Okay, you're at the summertime. Hey, yeah, you're in the Sahara Desert now. Right. You know what I mean? When you're really on point, when you're playing that game. And so really, so God's faithfulness to me on a personal level, and the extravagance, see His personal love for me, kind of helped me find my way back, find my sink and find my bearing, you know, as concerning how I'm going to live out purpose loudly. You know, I want to live out purpose quietly. I want to live out purpose radically and loudly. And so when I have lost my way, so to speak, or when I have had times where I doubted or feared or kind of declined, the anchoring point that brought me back to where I'm at today and where I'm progressing from is God's faithfulness and God's extravagant love.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think I find myself, as I get older, but to some extent, for the duration of my life, I can recall, I was always, initially it was with sports, but I was always fascinated by how a team could be, you know, down 7 points, 14 points, 21 points at halftime, and they go into the tunnel and they have their discussion, and they can come out and they can right the ship and they can turn it around and sometimes pull out a win for the game, or win by a field goal, or win by a couple touchdowns. And I was always impressed by that, not by the athleticism, but by the ability to change one's mindset. When in terms of football, you can look at the score and the score will tell you that you are down, but it doesn't tell you what the end of the story is, because there's a lot more game to play and you have a lot more opportunity to change your mindset. And that's really the key, because you're the same athlete in terms of football. Again, you're the same athlete that you were when you went out there before halftime, but the only thing that changed was your mindset. So once you change your mindset, the body has no choice but to follow. The mind is in control of the body, and it drives you toward what you set your goal to be. So if you set your goal to do the work that you said, to do the work that you believe you were called to do, then when your mind begins to right itself or to realign itself, you can find yourself pushing back toward that goal. And as you said, the faithfulness in regard to a purpose of a faith, in the faithfulness reminds you of the faithfulness and the justness of God, who cares enough to call out to you when you're in the Sahara Desert, or to call out to you when you're in the deep cold of the Iditarod, as you said. I think that definitely plays a part. So I find myself being very intrigued in the stories of people, real life people, and it doesn't have to be that they were at the lowest of the low, you know, standing on top of a building contemplating jumping, but just people who are at points in their life where it seemed like they were so deep in the hole or in the tunnel that they couldn't see any light. All directions were darkness. And the ability to right yourself. And I think that I'll say the word ability, because I think that you have to have some semblance of what the standard is to realign yourself to the standard, and to recognize that you are not at that standard. There was a phrase that a passage that a person was speaking about one time, and they were talking about it's a poor society that chooses to bend the ruler to align to a crooked state, than a society that chooses to leave the ruler as it is and contort their lives to match the ruler, because it makes more sense. You have an established guideline, an established standard that you have to reach for. So in regard to the purpose, I think that the purpose flies along those same pathways. It's an established purpose and an established set. that we have to adjust ourselves to. So I can definitely appreciate you're recognizing that at some points that you weren't where you knew you should be, or you weren't where you wanted to be, and that again, God was faithful enough to give a second chance, and that you were faithful enough to be, and obedient enough and intelligent enough to say, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity, second, third, fourth, or whatever it may be for people, because it's not just a one-time thing. Funny story, I remember when I first read when Jesus was asked how often should we forgive a person of their faults, and he said 70 times 7, which was I found it funny because that's an attainable number. It's not. I thought it would say something more philosophical, like as many times as there are grains of sand in the sea or something. No, he gave a real number, like 70 times 7. And I thought, well, man, that's a real number. That's not giving us much credit. But then I thought a little further on, and I thought, well, imagine if you were hungry one day and you came home and you thought you had a plate of food in the fridge, and you got home and somebody said, no, that food is gone, I ate it. I'd be a little mad. Now imagine if they did that 3 more times. I'd probably be fighting. So I thought that's not that attainable number of 70 times 7. That's par for the course. And I think we'll do good if we can even get close to forgiving a person of the same offense for that many times. So definitely agree with you in regard to the faithfulness of God, in regard to righting ourselves when we feel unsure or when we've made missteps in regard to the purpose specifically. So yeah, I'm agreeing with you 200% on that one. So I know the next question does say, what role did faith play in keeping focused on your purpose? But we've been discussing faith throughout, so I won't even ask that one because we've already covered that one. So the next question that we have here is, if you had to name, and if you can think of any throughout your faith walk, even now, probably more now so than earlier, if you had to name some key factors / life skills that you would say helped you the most significantly in terms of walking in your purpose and realigning yourself, or just walking in your purpose in general, what would you say some of those life skills that helped you a lot, and some of those key factors that were very, very helpful, tools that you use to keep walking in your purpose?
If I had to, just for this interview purpose, boil it down, it would be these 4 areas. One is realizing that God has given me a gift of tenacity, and that is, getting back up, getting back in the game, being persevering, being very intentional, very deliberate. So yeah, there's been many scraped knees and many fall downs and many mess ups that I've had in life and even in my Christian walk. But at the end of the day, God has afforded me that tenacity to get back up. He's afforded that to me, and I've seen it come into play time and time again. And I would think that if a person had any particular attribute or virtue about not quitting. Matter of fact, I kind of define that from a friend of mine, that's what he says faith is. Faith is not quitting. Faith is a winning spirit. And so that would be my first point, just having that gift in me not to quit, no matter how dark it is, no matter how many times I scrape my knees and fall. Get back up, get back in the game, because if you haven't won yet, then it's not the end of the game. So get back in there and win, get back in there and apply another strategy, go for another level. And sometimes in winning, it's much like in boxing. You can't see yourself in the fight, but somebody in your corner can give you a bit of advice to help you, make sure you keep your right guard up, make sure you step to the outside when you swing, and so that would be my second point, having the right people in your corner and being open to advice, being open to counsel, being open to people's suggestion. I think a lot of times people almost pride themselves as saying, let me ruin my own life. Let me make all the mistakes I want to make.
Right.
I don't need their help.
Right.
And of course that's their choice. They can do that. But I can say that God has placed some phenomenal people in my life, Bishop E.L. Warren, Apostle David Philemon, and the list just goes on. But those are two of the paramount leaders in my life that speak to me, and I'm indebted to them. So I think that that's a critical piece of really just having constitutional and solid people in your life that can speak, and they're able to not only just give you advice, but they can hear you. You can tell them about your trip ups, your falls, and they will coach you back in and let you know, hey, keep your right up, keep your mouthpiece in, keep your head tucked. All the things that they say in boxing.
Right.
And then I think the third thing is ongoing learning. Continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to read, continue to inspire yourself. Write out your goals in life, and have a sense of accomplishment, and make it happen for other people. I think this is one and the same. Learning to live life also has to do with how you share it with others, share with strangers, share with different diverse people groups, in the faith community or outside the faith community. I think that sharing, because this world that God created is his creation, and he does expect us to do mankind well, not whether they have a faith in Christ or whatever, but just to do mankind well. And I'm really on a mission to try to give expression to that. And I think the last thing is be true to the core people that you have in your life. Now, outside of loving all the world or trying to love the world or trying to have a positive outlook on life, be true to those core people. Give them access to you. Give them access to your funds, your money, your dreams. So that core people for me, of course, would be my wife and my 10 children. Just giving them access to me, trying to reach out and dialogue with them and have some type of ongoing relationship with them. I think that when people lose touch with those people that are in their inner circle, when they lose touch with those people that could and should mean the most to them, then that can make it a hard way to go in life. But some days I just wake up and I won't quit just because of my family. Mm-hmm. There are days I wake up and I want to get closer to God just because of my family. So my family is a great initiator. It's a great motivator why I continue to do and strive to do what I do.
Oh yeah, I can agree with you 300% again. That those are definitely key factors that, like you said, they can be used rather for your purpose or for any other purpose, just to walk this life. That you have to be disciplined and you have to be committed and you have to, as you said, the definition of faith, not give up. You just have to keep going forward. And as you said, in regard to sports, that as long as you are down in the game, there's still more game to play. You haven't won yet. You still have a chance to right the ship, and you still have a chance to fight toward what you believe is the goal, which is victory, which should be the goal. So I know we had an earlier conversation earlier in the week where you were speaking about something that I wanted to kind of bring up again, because it does revolve around purpose, and I thought it was an extremely poignant thing as I am a father now of almost 4 years and a new father with baby Issa. In an earlier conversation, we did speak about the practice where you began, where you would intentionally step into the role of community father, for lack of a better word, for those who may not have father figures in their lives, for the friends of your children, or even kind of, not direct relatives. I wanted to ask you the first question: where did that practice come from, or was it more of an innate skill that you felt that you could step into the role and do it well, or where did you believe that practice came from?
Well, of course, I'm sure I'm not the originator of that, but I definitely bought into, quote unquote, being a community father, in raising my children, particularly, having 5 boys in the home. At least in our dialogue, the question would come up from me as they would bring a friend by or a schoolmate by, do they have a father? And this was not being critical or cynical or putting them down or judging them. It was there are things that a father can benefit the child when they're in the home. If it is a healthy and a productive relationship, there are studies that show the input of a father, the input of an uncle, the input of a mentor in a person's life, how it can matter and it can make a difference in the very fabric of a person's life. So, to be honest, I think I look at the life of Abraham, a Bible character, and how that God uses this concept. And I'm kind of trying to be funny here, but bear with my humor.
Okay.
God first tells him, "You're going to be the father of your community," or he really says the father of nations,
Right.
plural, the father of nations. So if you reduce that nations down to what is a community, it's a baby nation. It's
Right.
a small nation.
Right.
It's an integral part of the nation. And so really that's kind of what fosters me to kind of take the onus of how does that look like in my day? Okay, I'm not in Bible time, but how does it look like in my day? And that is being a community father. And so I got so turned on by being a father and seeking to upgrade myself to be the father I should be, until I just expanded it beyond my immediate, 10 children, and began to open myself up to maybe nephews or different other young men in the church or community of faith that didn't have a father that was at home or active in their life, and even maybe on the job or different other places. So I just kind of evolved to a more higher consciousness of, hey, this role of a father is pivotal, and you can do it in a lot of instances, and of course, this is with the consent of somebody else. You're not just going to randomly tackle somebody and say, hey, I'm a father to you today. It doesn't happen like that, but there has to be some area of attention and interest, and there has to be some area of where that person says, hey, I need strengthening in this area, or I need to talk to you in this area, or whatever. And as much as I think about this, and this is my final statement on this, but the Super Bowl has these commercials, 30-second commercials, mini commercials that cost millions of dollars.
Right.
Millions of dollars, And the reason why I bring that up is because people say talk is cheap.
Oh yeah.
Well,
no.
If you're talking before a Super Bowl, it ain't cheap. You know what I'm saying? It's not cheap, And my point is this: the reason why it's not cheap is because the time frame in which you're speaking. The time frame. You're speaking to probably one of the most collective and concentrated audiences of every year.
Right.
I know there's other championship games, but that's one of the most collective and concentrated audiences. So when you are able to share that time to speak to the masses, it costs something. And so I'm just taking it back to community father, that many times when you are able to weigh in on the words that you have to people, talk is not cheap, especially if those words help inspire people, give them incentive, give them a desire to fulfill their goals, give them the desire to get back up if they have a bump in the road. Sometimes, honestly, Jonathan, God lets me meet different people I've had impact in over a matter of 20, 30 years. Sometimes I'll be at a gas station, somebody walk up to me and say, hey man, I remember when you worked with Christian Girls and Boys Club, and you are our assistant track coach. Or sometimes I'll be they say, hey man, you preached in my church when I was just in high school, and I remember your message helped me get through college. This happens to me probably on a monthly basis, that somebody's coming to me, whether on Facebook or whether live or whatever, that I'll meet people in my journey that will remind me that your impact as a father, as a coach, as a speaker did me good. And I want that to even be at a higher level, but I'm thanking God that he's graced me. I'm thanking God he's given me input and insight to help people in my role as a community father.
Oh yeah, I can agree with that one as well, because that's part of the reason that I wanted you specifically on the show here, because of that same thing, because of the thing, and again, not just because you're my blood uncle, or not just because you're a minister, but just as a human being, because of the impact. Now, being an uncle, you could be any type of uncle, and you still be my uncle. And being a minister, you can be any type of minister, but instead of just being any type, you were and are a positive beacon for, like as I said, for responsibility and accountability and pushing toward the greater, whatever the greater may be, pushing toward what the purpose is, and pushing toward what the end goal should be, and whatever things prosper, whatever things are of good report, whatever things are good. I think that that's a phenomenal thing, and as a African American male, it's definitely one of the things you don't get a chance to hear. Now, there's a lot of people that do it, but you don't have people doing it in your everyday life. So when you come across people that do stand in those roles, and when you come across people that do stand in those positions and do consistently over years and decades and multiple decades, that I think it's only right to at least say thank you. That's the very least you can do, or at least let the people know how they've been impacted by you, or how they've gone to use that same information to make the world a better place. Because to your point, when you spoke about Abraham building nations and out of community, if you can't reach the people within your immediate circle, it's very tricky to reach the people beyond you, because you have to start somewhere. You have to branch out from some starting point. So I think that to your point, yeah, definitely. I pray that continues to happen for you, because I'm going to do it. I talk about, as I said, the archetypes for manhood in my life, which would be my father, my grandfather, yourself, and Uncle Jimmy. The archetypes for manhood and masculinity, both spiritually speaking and naturally speaking, as a black man or as a man in general. These are the archetypes for me personally. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna rep those people who are monumental in my world, because I believe that their example and their very lives are the things that I have built the foundation of what I want to be and what I want to become upon. So yeah, kudos, definitely. So we are down to.
Let me interject this.
Go ahead.
And I know this is probably not a part of the script, but I want to say how proud I am of you as my nephew, as a man, as a black man. I have taken great pride in, what my sister has contributed in you. And the beautiful thing about it is not only just what she did as a single parent, though you did have two parents for sure, but just seeing what she did single-handedly, and then really to see how you took ownership of it. It's a lot of times people talk about what their mom did or the grandparent did or the guardian did, and that's good, and it has its place. But it's nothing like when it translates that child takes ownership of it and say, now, how do I want to translate that into my life? How do I want to take what I've heard about faith or what I've seen people walk out? And I can really see that you've endeavored to do that on a large scale, from your music, from your art, from parenting, from learning, from being a husband, and all these things. So I'm tremendously proud of you as my nephew. And of course, one of my favorite jokes is, you're one of my favorite nephews. You know what I'm saying?
Your favorite youngest nephew.
Yeah, right. My favorite youngest nephew. So that still stands to the day. So I gotta say that. Yeah.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're down to I think we have 2 questions left here, but of course that's 2 questions on paper. We never know. I may come up with one as we're talking here, but. So the second to last question I have for you is in regard to what we're talking about, being impactful in your community here. What advice would you or do you give to those who may come to you looking for help in identifying their own purpose? And what I kind of mean by, because I know that people, I think it's an interesting thing when people tell me what I'm supposed to do. I don't know if it works like that, but I'll say, what advice do you give people who are in search of narrowing down or beginning the process of looking for what their purpose could be? What advice do you give them?
Well, quickly, I think the 4 points I would give them. One is I'm going to refer to 3 scriptures,
Okay.
and that's number one that they maybe need to look up and take some point of reflection and some point of meditation. That's from Jeremiah, the 1st chapter and the 5th verse. Jeremiah, the 1st chapter and the 5th verse. Also Jeremiah, the 29th chapter and the 11th verse. The 29th chapter and the 11th verse. And then Psalms 139. Read the whole entire passage of Psalms 139. Those 3 passages of scriptures for me are what you call life scriptures or life points. They are my anchoring points when I think about this whole expression of what we call purpose. And I want to give a warning. A lot of times, particularly like in the faith community or maybe even the other communities, we can so overuse the word purpose, it becomes a buzzword until it just becomes very superficial. It just becomes a part of the cliche that we use in certain circles. And it cheats us out of the real significance that purpose can have. So I want to kind of give a warning to people that they don't take it lightly, that purpose is a force to be reckoned with. And when a purpose person really delves into and really gives themselves to find out what their purpose is, especially based upon the revelation of Scripture, that force of reckoning of purpose is going to be honed. It's going to be weaponized. You're going to be able to use that to make your life speak volumes, whether it's success or whether it's impact or influence, or whether it's just the quality and the presence that you carry. There's something about being around people with purpose. They carry a certain sense about why I'm here and the timeline that I'm here and what I need to do. So those would be the first 3 scriptures. The other thing is, I would say, number 2 out of the 4, get books that will help you identify. I know Dr. Miles Monroe, rest in peace. He's a very explicit writer and declarer and a true speaker concerning purpose. So if anybody can just go online and maybe look at a YouTube video or maybe look at some of his books. Now, he's not the only one for sure, but he's very a key component of, in my generation, of that person that really dialogue on purpose. So he would be one of the writers and one of the speakers that I would recommend. So any kind of writing or reading that you can do, because I kind of believe that life is short. So I'm not going to have a chance to master every subject. So if I can find someone who has some level of expertise, some level of skill, it's going to save me time.
Yeah.
If I can read about something that took you 30 years to learn and I can read it in 2 or 3 days, hey, it's to my advantage.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's a second part I want to say. Read information, read materials about purpose, and I think that will help, so to speak, turn the light on or give you a greater light as you try to find and walk out purpose. The third thing is sometimes life is not always spelled out like a straight path, like point A to point Z, straight ahead. Right. Life has curves, life has turns, life has valleys, life has mountains. So what I want to say is that a purpose is not always just defined like A and B, A, B, C. Life kind of has a way of illuminating you just as you live it. And this is where faith is so important. That faith kind of gives you the ability to stay on course when things are uncertain. The ability to stay on course when you don't know all the answers. The ability to stay on course, when it seems like, there's still a lot of questions in your life. Faith has that ability to help you move beyond what you see into a greater reality. This is one thing I share with people. There's a lesser reality and there's a greater reality. The lesser reality is not using our faith for the unseen. And the greater reality is using our faith for those things that we can't see. So whether we see it in the natural or whether we can't see it, if God's word says it, it is definitely a foundational piece we can use to walk out our purpose. And last but not least, for sure, and that is prayer or meditation, asking the Creator, asking the Almighty God. I call him Jesus Christ, but whoever you address, of course, I'm going to try to push out the truth as I know it, but dialogue with him and say, Lord, reveal to me, show me, help me to see, help me to realize that I'm here on earth for a given period of time. And what is it that you would have me to do? And if he doesn't speak to you directly in your heart or to your mind, he has circumstances in life to speak to you. You might have other speakers, or maybe, hopefully, this podcast will address some questions in people's life. So those would be my 4 points that I want to share.
And of course, as usual, I definitely agree with all of those in terms of finding your purpose. You definitely have to, as you said, life is finite. It's not as long as you think it might be, even if it's a couple hundred years long. It's not as long as you would imagine it to be. So if you can find people who have reached the levels that you want to get to, who have crossed the rivers and the roads that you have to travel, it is, like you said, to your advantage to speak to those people or read what they have written or watch the videos that they have compiled to put yourself at a greater advantage for your future. And even if it's not something directly, correlated like a one-to-one to what you're doing, it can definitely help you along the way to just have resources that are further ahead and can see a better vantage point and a brighter, a larger rather perspective of what you want to do. So I can definitely agree with you on that one. So our next one and our final question of sorts here is in regard, I know we spoke about this before and I've heard you speak about this many, many times, which is why the question is here. What do you, and we kind of covered it, so we'll still just ask as our last question, what do you feel are the biggest obstacles to people fulfilling or even attempting their goals or purposes? Because I remember we had conversations speaking about the cemetery being the place where you can find all the purposes that were unfulfilled or unattempted. So what do you feel like are the biggest obstacles to people fulfilling their purpose or even attempting to find out what those purposes may be?
Well, I think there's 3 that I would want to mention. Of course, the list really can be exhaustive. We could mention quite a few, maybe 25.
Right.
But just for time's sake, I think when people don't recover from offenses or hurts in life, that can be a very strong blind spot. And so if you're just kind of nurturing that hurt, that offense, that disappointment, and you're just rehashing that and recycling that, that can marginalize your outlook on life and your hope and your press to do something new and different. So sometimes people get stuck into those cycles. Look what my father didn't do. Look what my mother didn't do. Look what the school teacher didn't do. Look what my last job didn't do. So that whole negativity becomes very toxic to expressing and really embracing the next chapter of your life. So I think that is one of the major obstacles that stops people from discovering their purpose. Because if purpose is right behind that last trial you went through, if purpose is right behind that last failure or disappointment you went through, you won't get it because you're preoccupied with the blows and the throes of life. And life, yes, it does have disappointments. Life does have, those things that we trip up in. But we must recover, and we must learn how to forgive, and we must rise beyond those particular areas of challenge and those particular areas where we feel like we've been done wrong. Yes, even though you have been done wrong, don't let it rob you of discovering purpose and meaning for your life. The second thing I would say is that that we don't surround ourselves, whether we're talking about family or immediate friends or in a larger scale, uh, maybe environments that really germinate in us the seed of purpose. In other words, I try to surround myself with people that think the same way I do in some respect. I wouldn't say every item, but this purpose thing is so important to me that I try to have friends that think in terms of that. I'm glad I have family members that think in terms of that. I seek out conferences and webinars and different other books. So I constantly feed this thought and reality of purpose. And I think a lot of times people don't give purpose the weight that it should have in their life. And so they don't surround themselves by being refreshed and digesting things about purpose. And so my friend base, generally speaking, my family base, and a lot of other things that I do outside those two circles all still feed into my purpose. And I think when you don't have those voices, when you don't have those stable anchoring people, then you're just kind of left on your own. And life is of such that you just cannot figure it out on your own. There's some things you can discover for sure, but just the whole scope of life, I think you need, and I would recommend you getting input. Thirdly speaking, I think journaling is so paramount. Journaling, and that's writing things down. How did my day go? How did my week go? How did my month go? How did my year go? And when you journal, you can reflect back at a dark period in your life that you feel like, wow, that was going to be the end, or hey, I'm going to fall off the cliff, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then when you look back at it, you're in a new chapter in your life, and you're in a new day in your life. And so I think journaling, this is something I've done since I was in my teenage years. Oh my goodness, I have so many writings. And it can be a strong reflecting point. It can be a strong playbook to come back from. That's why they have playbooks in football, per se. Okay, we're going to try this scheme, or we're going to try this run, or we're going to try this, way to score. And so many times when you're not tracking how your life goes, you're not able to properly reflect and try a new play in life. Try a new, way you're going to reach that goal. Try a new way. So I would think journaling, writing things down, writing your days down, writing your goals down would be of great help to those who would be disciplined to do that. And I think last but not least, concerning the obstacle, that you got to find something to live for. Yeah. And I think when people kind of struggle with purpose or struggle with that identity of purpose, is because they really haven't found something to live for. And for me, I'm living for love, man. I'm living for love. I'm living to love. I'm living to give love. I'm living to share love. I'm living to experience love, and I don't mean that in a loose way, but I mean in a very constructive and a positive way. And I think sometimes when you're not afforded something to live for, it puts a ongoing question mark in your life. But if you have come to terms with, hey, I'm living for love, and I tell you, there's a book I'm actually working with somebody with, and hopefully it should be out here in the next year or so, but it's called The Technology of Love, the powerful read. It's a powerful read. And when people just come to terms that if I don't do nothing else in life but to love somebody and receive love, that in itself is a place where you find satisfaction, fulfillment, and approval. And again, it speaks to this whole topic of purpose, finding something to live for. And so if you haven't, I want a person to at least evolve and give it a chance. Come to terms with finding something constructive and positive, and in my case, something that's even eternal to live for, which is the love of God, sharing His love, being about love. Amen. And it not only is in the sense of preaching it, but just, helping somebody who might be homeless on the street. I don't say I give my whole mortgage money to them,
Right.
but I am a strong advocate. I'm a strong component or proponent of love. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And if you're listening to the program, I think you should definitely, if you haven't, rewound them to focus on the things that'll help you not leave your purpose on the earth should you pass, that you leave empty, that you're not filled with the purpose because you didn't take the chance to fulfill those. And as Minister Fred said, surrounding yourself by purpose-driven people who are not necessarily on the same path that you are, but they are definitely on the same path of striving toward their purpose, whatever that may be. Find yourself a group of like-minded individuals who can help you push along the way. Meditating on the things that you want to happen, to have a good foundation. As he said, you can choose that to be prayer or just meditation on something higher than yourself that you can push for and that you can find solace and support in. Journaling is also a phenomenal way to see how far you've come. It helps you to develop a thought. It helps you to develop your written word. And also, if you happen to read them through, it helps to develop your spoken word with your internal monologue, so you can see exactly where you've been and where you're going, and what plans you have, and how close you have to go to get to those plans, or how successfully you have accomplished those goals. I think either one of those are definitely gems that you can latch on to. And the number one thing that he spoke about being forgiveness, I think that's a key one and a critical one. And I know it's far easier said than done, and it's not just a matter of saying I forgive you or I'm sorry. It's a daily practice that you have to work up to. You have to work within to say, forgive, and then walk in forgiveness, and then act in forgiveness, and make it a full forgiveness, not just the lip service of it. So I can agree, like I said, to all the other ones. I agree 150%, whatever, the numbers don't matter. I'm just throwing out percentages, but I agree is the important thing. I agree with all the statements in regard to not leaving your purpose or your destination before you've reached it. I think that's critical, because I think so many people find themselves in a position where they feel that they have to compromise their purpose or their destiny for whatever, for job or for a spouse or whoever. I think that it's an unfortunate thing to find yourself in those positions where you haven't fully explored what you're here to do, and I think that you'll leave unfulfilled if you haven't at least attempted that. So yeah, I agree 200% from the 150. I agree. Now, since that was our last question, and I do thank you 100% again for indulging me on my little journey of Some Roses Are Red, because I think it's important that we not only have dialogue, but we have understanding. And I think that through these podcasts that I've done, I think it was a great way to have dialogue with people who I think are profound people, who are insightful people, who are impactful people, but you have understanding of a different perspective on different topics, or just a different perspective on life in general. So I'm extremely thankful that you took time out of your schedule to accommodate me on that. Now, what I'd like to do because of that is, since this is the end of the program here, and I don't have any sponsors, I know that you are the host of the new Facebook Live show, and I imagine that this is not the first iteration of the program of 9 Smooth Stones. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple minutes to explain what's the significance of the name 9 Smooth Stones, and what is the program about, and what is your vision for that program in regard to who may see the videos?
Well, 9 Smooth Stones comes from I was born in the 9th month of the year. I was born on the 29th day, and I was born in the year of 1959. So 999. So that number 9 is significant to me. And then in my faith, there's 9 fruit of the Spirit that the Scripture supports. There's 9 gifts of the Spirit that the Scripture supports, and there's even 9 expressions of the Beatitudes that Jesus taught in the Gospels. So that number 9 kind of continue as a pattern. So when David went to fight Goliath, he picked out 5 smooth stones. He only ended up using one of them. Mm-hmm. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Goliath did have 4 or 5 other brothers. I think it was 4 or 5. So he was packing enough stones that he was ready to take them all out. So 9 smooth stones really just kind of came out of my affinity towards the number 9. And what is set to do, and the reason why I'm using that format on Facebook and other media outlets, is really just to give a very curtailed and a very short message, no more than 4 minutes, to our millennial people want to call themselves. But, I know a lot of times they don't have a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And so most people can tolerate, 2 to 4 minutes of a message. Most people, right. Not all, but most. And so I really just try to stick with the timeline of about actually 3 minutes and 33 seconds, but sometimes it may go to up to 4 or no more than 4.5 minutes, but never 5. So I found an audience that wants to get the word of God, but at a very short interval.
Yeah.
And so that's our desire. And we really are just speaking about the things in life that will be motivational, the things in life that will be institutional, the things we need to institute in our life. And we think about those things that are turning points. What are the things we need to consider? So out of our 8 or 9 broadcasts, we've had a lot of good comments, a lot of feedback. We just are not full throttle into it right now, but we're about to pick up the pace here in another 2 or 3 months. And so thanks for asking that question. I trust that some people will check it out. The 9 Smooth Stones, the series that we already have, the 8 that we've already done. And there's more forthcoming in the near future. Like I said, the next 3 or 4 months.
Okay, that sounds good. And I think it's interesting that you have the 9 Smooth Stones, because while you're talking there, born in the month of September. I also am born in the month of September. First name is Jonathan, which is 9 letters, and 9s and 7s are mine. So Jonathan, 9 letters, September, 9 letters. My middle name is Maurice, which is 7 letters, so 9s and 7s. I was born in the year 1979. Graduated high school in the year 1997, so 7-9 forward and backward. So yeah, I can definitely vibe with, not that we're into numerology, but just, it's interesting things with the 9 Smooth Stones, so I can definitely be an avid watcher of that. I've watched, I think, most of them so far. And while we're talking here, every first Sunday of each month, I have another podcast that I do called The Power of Hope. And that's just inspiration. And like to your point there, I try to keep it loosely 6 minutes or so. But I think what I'll do for because I have an episode that'll be for tomorrow, and I think I may just share one of the 9 Smooth Stones for people who may not be familiar with it. We'll share that on the Power of Hope podcast, because it's basically shooting for the same thing, to be insightful, to be transformative, and to be inspirational all at once. So I think that the content on 9 Smooth Stones does that impeccably. So why not share that as well? The people who are effective in what they do, why not be a supporter of them as well? So I will gladly do that, and we'll have that up tomorrow the same time, whichever the last episode, so you can check it out if you're listening here now. I'll have a link on the probably on the YouTube page and also on the Facebook page for 9 Smooth Stones. In addition, you can also check out the last episode of 9 Smooth Stones. I'll have that on the Power of Hope podcast, and I have a link for that as well. But that's pretty much the end of our program. So I thank you immensely again for, like I said, taking time out of your schedule, and for just having a conversation with me, because like I said, in addition to and apart from being my blood family, I think it's great to have, like we were talking about before, a circle of people who are similar to who you are, black men who can talk about things other than what we're portrayed as in popular media structures. Like we can have conversations about a myriad of topics, and it can all be positive, and it can all be toward the growth of one another. So I'm extremely thankful again that you've indulged me to do that on this program here. And I'll be watching 9 Smooth Stones, and I trust that I'll be talking to you as you come in the city, or just reaching out to you from time to time just to pick your brain. So I thank you again, and I'll leave you with the final word. If you want to have the final word for the program today, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan, for having me today. And I am very fascinated about this phenomena that is the Niagara Falls, that is up towards New York and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been there yet, but I'm on there. And the reason why I want to share that as my last point is that Niagara just reminds me of life, a continually pouring out, a continuing a force, a continuing splash and refreshing. And I just see life as that, and I've had my battles, I've had my shares of ups and downs, but I just see life as that Niagara. Just, of course, the weight and the force and the speed of Niagara, you couldn't stand under it directly.
Right.
But it still speaks to just how vibrant life is, just how forceful and how refreshing life is, and it wants to carry you beyond where you are. So I just want to encourage people to really embrace life, let it carry you beyond where you are. Thank you so much for having us. I hope people will tune into your podcast, tune into mine on Facebook, what have you, but let life just take you beyond where you are.
All right, thank you very, very much again, and this has been Some Roses Are Red with our guest minister, Fred Edwards, and our topic, purpose. So I hope that after listening to this podcast, you have found yours, or if not, you'll begin the process of seeking it out and not stopping until you find it. That'll be it for today, so you guys be blessed. Next time on Some Roses Are Red. Hi, this is John for Some Roses Are Red. Every first and third Monday of the month from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., we're live on YouTube Live and Facebook Live. Join us as we explore a new topic each show, and feel free to chat with us live on either platform as we explore the many facets of interpersonal relationships and how to navigate those interactions while keeping those relationships intact. Again, at Some Roses Are Red Live every first and third Monday at 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Hope we talk to you soon.
79.7